Good evening. Welcome to News Plus here on Loveworld USA. I'm TGK Andre. Let's take a quick look at the top headline stories this evening. Judge temporarily halts Trump administration's mass layoff plan at federal agencies. Mexico sues Google over Gulf of America renaming on Maps platform. Defense Secretary Hegseth orders military academies to base admissions solely on merit. Texas enacts nation's toughest foreign land ban targeting China, Iran, and Russia. And now to the news. A federal judge has placed a 14-day pause on the Trump administration's sweeping effort to lay off tens of thousands of federal employees, citing the lack of congressional authorization. The ruling comes after a coalition of unions, nonprofits, and local governments filed suit challenging the legality of the reorganization plan. U.S. District Judge Susan Ilston ruled that while the president has authority to pursue structural changes in the executive branch, large-scale reorganizations require approval from Congress. The president has the authority to seek changes to executive branch agencies, but he must do so in lawful ways, Ilston stated. The reorganization plan, spearheaded by Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency, called for major reductions in workforce, closure of regional offices, automation of tasks, and elimination of non-critical roles. The plaintiffs argued the abrupt restructuring has already caused chaos within agencies and disrupted essential services. A hearing is scheduled for May 22nd to consider a longer injunction. Judge Ilston indicated the plaintiffs are likely to succeed on key claims and warned of irreparable harm without immediate judicial intervention. Here we're looking at a case where, and we've said it on the show time and time again, the Trump administration is looking to do a lot in a hurry. And amidst the flurry of all that they're doing, somebody has to be able to take a step back and look and see what this is going to do to the government. Because sure, to restructure the budget, to reduce the government, which Trump did promise to do as part of his campaign, you have to let people go. You have to let people go in the thousands. But when that number enters the tens of thousands, you don't want a situation where how the Liberation Day tariffs hit the economies of the world and everything started feeling unfirm. You don't want that to also happen in the United States government, where you fire tens of thousands of workers and now federal services that are critical don't work anymore because the wrong person was fired, or the linchpin who went under the radar no longer works there. So now when the system needs to be troubleshooted, the people who had the information and the know-how are no longer available working at that place. So it makes sense to see why there may be a bit of a pushback on firing so many employees at the same time. If there's a gradual ease-out process, that's much different than just letting people go and pretty much trying to revamp the government cold turkey. But we will see how the Trump administration plans to respond to this pushback against their method of just doing a mass firing of the federal government, because it's not like a corporation. You can let people go, and if your business takes a bit of a slowdown, that's cool. By the time the restructuring is done, you can more than make up for it. In the government, if the government takes a slowdown, people die. Livelihoods are lost. I mean, workers don't get paid. If certain services are cut off, people will lose their lives. So it's good to see that the administration may be forced to take a bit of a slower approach to correcting this issue. Mexico has filed a formal lawsuit against Google after the tech company renamed the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America on its Maps platform, with the United States in line with President Donald Trump's executive order. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum announced the legal action Friday, calling the change a violation of national sovereignty. The label change stems from a directive signed by President Trump on his first day back in office in January, renaming the northern portion of the Gulf. While the order applies only to U.S. territorial waters, Mexico argues that Google's platform change affects broader international waters, including Mexico and Cuba's continental shelves. Mexico's foreign ministry had previously appealed to Google to reconsider the decision, emphasizing that over 49% of the Gulf falls under Mexican jurisdiction. Scheinbaum criticized Google for exceeding the bounds of the U.S. order and erasing historical and geographical consensus that had recognized the Gulf of Mexico for more than 400 years. Google defended its actions by citing its long-standing policy to reflect official government renaming conventions in respective regions. The company now shows Gulf of America within the U.S., Gulf of Mexico and Mexico, and Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America in parentheses in international view. The lawsuit coincides with the U.S. House passing the Gulf of America Act, which seeks to codify Trump's order. Let's take a look.
She threatened legal action against Google back in February over its labeling of the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America on Google Maps for US users. President Claudia Sheinbaum has now announced that Mexico is following through on that warning.
Google is already being sued. There has already been a first resolution, and it is being awaited.
Sheinbaum insists that Donald Trump's executive order in January to rename the Gulf applies only to the US section of the continental shelf.
What we are saying is that Google should put the Gulf of America where it is the Gulf of America, which is the part that corresponds to the territory of the United States, and then put the Gulf of Mexico to the territorial part that corresponds to Mexico and Cuba.
Google has previously argued that it made the change in line with a practice of following name changes when altered by official government sources. Sheinbaum's announcement comes after the Republican-led House of Representatives voted earlier this week to formalize the name change for federal agencies.
On this vote, the yeas are 211, the nays are 206. The bill is passed without objection.
The measure is unlikely to be given the green light by the Senate. Trump has contended that his order was justified as the US, quote, do most of the work there and it's ours. Critics argue the move is in line with his expansionist aims, which include threatening to seize control of Greenland. The water has been referred to as the Gulf of Mexico for more than 4 centuries and is internationally recognized as such.
This is arguing semantics, to put it bluntly. Google's policy has been long-standing. Whatever the government that their maps is functioning in has a territory being called, they have it as such. If one government has something that's called a different name, I mean, for example, in China, or the mountain range that separates China and India, the Himalayas, the Chinese government might call it something different from the Indian government. So in India, Google would have the Indian name, the Himalayas, and in China, it would have a different name. But you wouldn't have a country, of course, internationally, it would be called the Himalayas because that's the internationally recognized name. But you wouldn't have a country complaining. Of course, now, it's been long-standing, like they said, it has been recognized as the Gulf of Mexico for the last 400 years. But when the United States government chooses to make a change that only affects the United States, it doesn't have any bearing on the ownership of the Gulf. Internationally, still shows Gulf of Mexico first, with the Gulf of America in parentheses. It's literally an argument over semantics, because if you're using Google Maps in Mexico, it will still show the Gulf of Mexico. So to the Mexican president and her Mexican constituents, nothing has changed. To the Americans that she does not represent, that she does not govern, something has changed. But that's because her government wanted it changed. So it's really, again, it's nothing but arguing semantics, because it doesn't affect the day-to-day ownership of the Gulf of Mexico, especially with regards to Mexico. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth on Friday directed the nation's military academies, including West Point, the U.S. Naval Academy, and the U.S. Air Force Academy, to eliminate all race, ethnicity, and sex considerations in admissions, mandating that selections be based exclusively on merit. In a memo to Academy leaders, Hegseth emphasized that the Department of Defense must ensure admissions to these prestigious institutions are based exclusively on merit to maintain military excellence and combat readiness. Selecting anyone but the best erodes lethality, he warned. The directive requires the secretaries of the military branch to certify within 30 days that their admissions processes no longer weigh demographic factors. Hegseth specified the merit may include athletic performance, military experience, or success at preparatory schools. Concluding his memo, Hegseth said the department must remain steadfast in its pursuit of excellence. A strong officer corps is essential to ensuring the United States military remains the most lethal the world has ever known. Let's watch this.
My assessment is the DoD will be merit-based and colorblind. You will be judged based on how good you are at your job. Full stop. That's it. And so getting rid of diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI, getting rid of different standards was fundamental to getting back to basics. And that's what when I get a chance to talk to commanders here, that's what I emphasize. We're getting back to basics. Standards at every level need to be adhered to, and that's at a baseline. And when you talk to soldiers, you talk to Marines, they get it. They get it. They've seen the standards slide under the previous administration. They watched, in many different ways how it eroded, or quotas were being met, or different aspects boxes had to be checked. Not anymore. The only box that gets checked in this Defense Department is lethality and your ability to do your job.
There are some places where representation matters. I do not believe that the Army is one of them. Because first and foremost, this is an institution. The United States Army is an institution that has one primary objective: to defend the country against all threats and to ensure that their missions are completed as they've been assigned. To that end, you need the best of the best. The only quota that should be there is that you are the best of the best. Whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're yellow, pink, green, or a lizard person, for that matter. And that tone of phrase just goes to show you the ridiculousness of it all, that you would go based on demographics. Because if a war breaks out, you don't care the color of the person you're fighting beside when you're fighting for your life. If you need security, you don't care who it is as long as you know that they can do the job. If a 5'8", 160-pound woman can do a job better than a 6'2", 210-pound man, because the woman is somehow the Scarlet Widow from the Avengers series, and the man, has a degree, a white belt in karate, you would go with the woman, because all you're looking at is the qualifications. It doesn't matter the demographic. So what the Defense Secretary Hegseth is saying is that it's not that they won't take women. It's not that they won't take people of certain races or creeds. If you're qualified, you will get in, because that is what should matter more than anything else. And honestly, it should go the same way all around. Of course, you look at the medical field. Some people, and it's been widely reported, have been refused to be treated by black doctors, by Hispanic doctors, because they don't trust them. But at the end of the day, what matters is that those people passed the MCAT, or if you're a nurse, they passed the NCLEX. They got the qualifications and they're qualified to do that role. And that's all that matters when your life is in the balance. It's the same way with the Army. You shouldn't be trying to fill a quota there. The quota should be to bring the most readily skilled and readily available people to the forefront for them to do their work. Because when your country's safety, security, and future is in the balance, when global peace, safety, security is in the balance, you don't care the person's hair color. You don't care what percentage of minorities are inside the Army. You care about the percentage of readily able men and women that are able to serve their country. Because at the end of the day, when that blood is shed, it's all one color. There is no difference. Good on the Defense Secretary. Texas lawmakers have passed Senate Bill 17, a sweeping new measure designed to block hostile foreign entities, including those affiliated with China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia, from purchasing land in the state. The bill, described by State Representative Cole Hefner as model legislation, is scheduled to take effect September 1st and is aimed at neutralizing land acquisitions that pose a threat to national security. Senate Bill 17 prohibits entities linked to governments flagged by the U.S. Director of National Intelligence from buying Texas property if the purchase could endanger public safety. It grants the Texas Attorney General power to investigate and reverse illicit land deals. The legislation was sparked by reports like the 2021 acquisition of more than 140,000 acres near Laughlin Air Force Base by a retired Chinese general. The law applies broadly to agriculture, commercial, industrial, and residential land, including mineral and timber rights, with exemptions for U.S. citizens and legal permanent residents. Critics have raised concerns about xenophobia, but Hefner emphasized the law is based on actions, not nationality. This isn't about race. It's about defending Texans from foreign espionage, he said. Supporters hope the legislation will inspire other states to take similar action. This shouldn't be partisan, Hefner added. It's about securing the homeland and ensuring our people can live free and safe in their communities. Let's take a look.
The bill targeted foreign land ownership from 4 countries the U.S. considers national security threats: China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. But according to our partners at the Texas Tribune, House members added an amendment that allows the governor to determine the countries. Supporters say SB 17 protects Texas resources. Critics, though, warn it could hurt legal residents.
Any of the top-tier medical districts throughout this state, the opportunity and dream for American preeminence in biotech and biomedical innovation will be lost.
Members, Senate Bill 17 is about ensuring that Texas's land and natural resources do not fall into the hands of an adversarial nation or their agents.
The bill now heads to the Senate, which must approve the House amendments before sending it to the governor.
This is a no-brainer, honestly. Again, this stems from the 2021 story where a retired Chinese general purchased 140,000 acres near an Air Force base. I mean, this screams like a beginning plot of something that will unfold decades down the line. And of course, since they legally own the land, whatever they do on that land, as long as it falls within U.S. law, is up to them. And when you have these foreign entities that are against American interests, owning land that they can legally control, it poses a conflict of interest within these governments, these state governments, on whether they should allow this or not. I mean, because if you have somebody that can have land that is against your interests near a government base, near agriculture, who knows what they can do secretly? Who knows the information that they can gather with their advanced technology if they're near an Air Force base, if they're near a military base, if they establish some kind of satellite communication system to steal satellite relays, if they decide to poison the ground near a major agricultural main for the state or for the area. I mean, the choices, the opportunities for them to do whatever they would want to do are endless, and legally, you can't kick them out because they own the land. I mean, it's one of the founding principles of, the United States, life, liberty, and, well, now it's called the pursuit of happiness, but originally it was life, liberty, and the ability to purchase property. So it's good on Texas for passing SB 17 because, again, it's not about nationality. There's different countries included, and you also have a European country like Russia. It's about protecting American interests and the security of your people first and foremost. We will take a break, and when we return, we'll take a look at some of the stories that made the headlines this week. Don't go anywhere.
President Trump kicking off another busy week at the White House.
It has been yet another eventful week in Washington.
The activity level is off the charts. The president dialed in. He is executing his agenda at a lightning fast pace. Now, here's something we rarely see in American politics. President Trump is actually keeping his campaign promises, and he's doing them as quickly as possible.
This administration's moving at political light speed, and they're just getting started.
We're going to have one shot at this, and no other president's going to do what I'm doing.
Goodbye. We love you. We will be back in some form. Have a good life. We will see you soon. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Official, former President Donald Trump will be running for president again in 2024.
Has Donald Trump got the stamina and the will to do this again? He's come under such tremendous...
Everything is on the line in this election.
A busy day in the campaign world up in Butler today. Former President Trump holding a rally at 5 o'clock.
They just tried to kill President Trump.
Not even an assassin's bullet could stop him.
It feels like the climax of a superhero movie. The first act, up 2016. The second act, 2020. The third act, he almost dies. and then what happens?
Donald Trump will become the 47th President of the United States.
Rare in American politics, a presidential sequel.
He believes he has a, quote, mandate to bring common sense back to the country.
It's our time to take up the righteous cause of American liberty and begin the most thrilling days in the history of our country. This will be our greatest era. With God's help, over the next 4 years, we are going to lead this nation even higher, and we are going to forge the freest, most advanced, most dynamic, and most dominant civilization ever to exist on the face of this earth.
He has the opportunity to reset everything around the world.
Under President Trump's leadership, the message to America's enemies is loud and clear. Peace through strength is back.
No amount of hysteria, no amount of fear-mongering is going to shake the president's resolve.
This is the wholesale destruction of the liberal state. He is gutting liberal Washington, D.C. in a way that they say could be permanent.
47 means business. The White House is holding all the cards.
I return to the presidency confident and optimistic that we are at the start of a thrilling new era of national success.
The bottom line is whether you like Trump or you don't like him, you can't say that he's coming and not try to deliver, and he's doing so in historic fashion.
A tide of change is sweeping the country. Sunlight is pouring over the entire world. And America has the chance to seize this opportunity like never before.
Welcome back. Your Loveworld special, Season 11, Phase 5, is drawn to a close with profound spiritual insight into the blessing of Abraham. The final day commenced with powerful worship and fervent prayer, setting the stage for Pastor Chris Yakalome, DSC, DD, to continue his revelatory teaching on the divine inheritance bestowed upon believers. Further expounding on the message from the previous 2 days, Pastor Chris emphasized that the blessing of Abraham is not a symbolic concept, but a tangible reality for every Christian who walks by faith. He described it as a divine empowerment to prosper, spiritually, materially, and physically, made available to all who know who they are in Christ. Elucidating further on the blessing, Pastor Chris noted that Christians have the seal of Christ on them, which is bigger than any type of seal. In closing, Pastor Chris admonished Christians to know who they are in Christ and the blessings they have received through him. It's been the most impactful 3 days of the Word, and the common thread from all those who are part of the program is that their lives will never be the same. Let's take a look.
You have to be careful. The matter is not ended. I will discuss it further on some other occasion.
Yes, sir.
Until you stop doing it.
Yes, sir. Yes,
sir. Praise God. Wow. So let's go into today's subject. I'm going to read to you from Galatians chapter 3 and verse 29. Like we're continuing from yesterday's discussion, okay? And if ye be Christ, then are ye Abraham's seed, and heirs according to the promise. Now,
What a wonderful and inspiring 3 days of inspiration through the Word. I mean, hearing the way Pastor Chris elucidated on the blessings of Abraham, it was nothing short of invigorating. I mean, you're hearing talks, because of course there was a song that we used to sing at the children's church, that Abraham's blessings are ours, and we're blessed in the morning and we're blessed in the evening. And the unfortunate thing about a lot of children's nursery rhymes or children's church songs is that there's a lot of truth in them that's often taken as just another thing to sing. But those kind of confessions, when you actually come to understand it, the power behind it, and you actually come to walk in it, transforms your life in a way that you can never expect. Because the blessings of Abraham to which the man made a covenant with God. He was called a friend of God. That the nations would be his, that his seed would have the nations, and his generations up until the end. The amount of power that's packed in there. Pastor was speaking about, not really having a need for anything because all things are yours. Because all things were promised. The nations were promised to Abraham. And it all goes back to that song. Abraham's blessings are ours. They're mine. They're yours. You're blessed in the morning. You're blessed in the evening. And you're going out and you're coming in. But it's all about having that consciousness, that Christ consciousness. And Pastor even expounded on, having the seal of Christ on you. That's bigger than any seal. So the same way that the world responded as he spoke to the fig tree and it died, and it withered, and as he spoke to the seas and to the winds and it calmed, we have that power resonant, dormant in us, because that seal, that signet resides in us, in our spirit. And man, there's so much. There was so much the pastor shared. And the same way that the Bible records that, all the libraries in the world couldn't contain the miracles that the Lord Jesus performed. It's the same way that, that all the time on this program couldn't contain what I would love to share with the audience. But of course, the rebroadcasts have been on Loveworld USA. And I pray that you are blessed as much as we have been blessed with the most recent Your Loveworld specials. A coalition of 20 state attorney generals, led by New York Attorney General Letitia James, have filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration over deep staffing cuts and the closure of agencies within the Department of Health and Human Services. The suit alleges the administration violated federal law by reducing the number of HHS agencies from 28 to 15 and laying off approximately 20,000 employees. According to the lawsuit, significant cuts were made to the Food and Drug Administration, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the National Institutes of Health. A new agency, the Administration for Healthy America, was created to absorb some of the responsibilities of the eliminated offices, including those dealing with mental health and worker safety. The Attorney General claims the downsizing has impaired the federal government's ability to carry out critical public health functions, citing the termination of staff, managing poverty guidelines and utility assistance, as well as halts to drug use surveys and the 988 suicide lifeline. The complaint also alleges key CDC functions, including measles testing and maternal mortality monitoring, have been severely limited. The plaintiffs are seeking a preliminary injunction to block further cuts. A separate lawsuit over the termination of $11 billion in public health grants is already underway, with a federal judge temporarily halting those reductions pending a final ruling. Let's take a look.
In a roughly 100-page lawsuit against the Trump administration, Rhode Island Attorney General Peter Nerona, alongside 20 other states, are suing over changes that are being made to HHS.
The office's fourth case against the Trump administration's patently unconstitutional dismantling of our democracy. This time, ignoring the will of the Congress and thus the Constitution.
In March, the Trump administration announced it was restructuring the department that oversees dozens of federal public health organizations by consolidating the agencies and cutting at least 10,000 full-time employees. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. acknowledged last month that they've had to ask some of those employees to come back.
Were not doing their jobs, and there was tremendous redundancy.
But he says the goal is that these cuts will save taxpayers $1.8 billion. What's wrong with that?
They may kill a lot of them. These actions may save money, but they're going to kill people.
At a news conference today, Nerona says Rhode Islanders have already lost $1.9 million in federal funds because of the restructuring, affecting everything from maternal health to smoking prevention.
Nearly 100% of our grant funding as of last week has been eliminated in Rhode Island.
The Department of Homeland Security has launched a new initiative encouraging illegal aliens to self-deport, offering commercial flight assistance and a $1,000 stipend to those who would voluntarily leave the U.S. According to the DHS, the program will save American taxpayers nearly 70% of current deportation costs, reducing the average from $17,000 to approximately $4,500 per case. The stipend will only be dispersed after self-deportation is confirmed. Individuals will apply through the CBP Home Self-Deportation app. DHS Secretary Christine Noem called the program the safest and most cost-effective method for removing individuals unlawfully present in the country. Those actively pursuing self-removal through the app will be deprioritized for arrest and detention while in the process of leaving. The policy comes amid a broader enforcement effort by the Trump administration to deport criminal aliens and members of designated foreign terrorist organizations, including MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. DHS said the self-deportation program provides a lawful pathway for eventual re-entry while reducing burdens on law enforcement and taxpayers. Let's take a look.
President Donald Trump's administration says it's going to pay immigrants in the United States illegally who've returned to their home country voluntarily $1,000 as it pushes forward with its mass deportation agenda. The Department of Homeland Security said Monday that it's also paying for travel assistance and that people who use their CBP Home app to tell the government they plan to return home will be, quote, deprioritized for detention and removal by immigration enforcement. Trump has made immigration enforcement a centerpiece of his campaign.
Our border is open and gushing. It's a big gushing wound.
But that is a costly, resource-intensive endeavor. The Republican administration is pushing Congress for a massive increase in resources, but also pushing people in the country illegally to, quote, self-deport.
It's good to see the Trump administration finding creative measures to get the results that they've been looking for. Saving 70% per individual is a great deal, especially since they had to slow down the deportations due to the cost that it was incurring on them. I mean, at a point, the deportation and the deportation on facilities, the detaining facilities, were about 115% over capacity nationwide. So with this, of course, the incentive is that you do get a stipend. So that's $1,000, plus you get a free ticket to wherever you came from. And then on top of that, you also get a legal pathway to re-enter years later. So there's multiple benefits to following this self-deportation process rather than, waiting to be caught by ICE or the DHS and having to go that way, in which you don't get any of the benefits and you still have to leave. So it's good to see that they're taking a civil solution to solving this issue rather than just going in all rough-nosed. We'll be right back with more news. Be sure to stay tuned.
The world is watching. Billions of hearts, billions of souls, each one a life that matters. And every day they're being touched by the power of the gospel because you gave our dearest partners. Through the Loveworld networks, the message of our Lord Jesus is reaching further than ever before, into nations where churches are silenced, into homes where hope had disappeared, into hearts where light had never shone, into every man's world. This is the year of completeness, and truly, we are everywhere. You, our highly esteemed partners, have taken your place in this divine mission, the mandate to complete the full preaching of the gospel in all nations of the world. Through your giving, our language-specific stations are now heard in corners of the earth where no preacher has ever stepped. You sponsored airtime that transformed lives, sending light into the darkest corners. You brought the Loveworld networks into homes, schools, offices by tagging your names to our ministry programs, sponsoring our studio upgrade around the world, and ensuring Pastor Chris in 1 billion homes is a reality. In 2025, we are taking bold steps to complete the full preaching of the gospel in our time through our Pastor Chris in 1 billion homes project. Together, we are fulfilling Matthew 24:14, and this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. We are marching forward, flooding the nations with the truth of God's word. Pastor Chris in 1 billion homes. No barrier is too high, no nation is too far, no home is unreachable. And the time is now. We call on our army of passionate partners across the globe. Be a part of Pastor Chris in 1 Billion Homes Project today. Stand with the man of God. Stand with the Loveworld networks. Partner without limits. Let your giving echo into eternity. And together, let's flood the earth with the message of our Lord Jesus. For more information, please call the number showing on your screen. God bless you.
Welcome back. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced Tuesday the U.S. authorities have seized 11.5 kilograms of fentanyl, including approximately 3 million counterfeit pills marked as oxycodone. Bondi described the operation as one of the largest fentanyl seizures in American history. Authorities also confiscated 35 kilograms of methamphetamine, 7.5 kilograms of cocaine, 4.5 kilograms of heroin, $5 million in cash, and 49 firearms. 16 individuals were arrested in the operation, including 6 men who are confirmed to be in the country illegally. The alleged ringleader, Alberto Salazar Amaya, a high-ranking member of the Sinaloa cartel, was reportedly residing in Salem, Oregon. Authorities said the drug distribution network spanned multiple U.S. states, including New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah. Bondi credited the Drug Enforcement Administration and its state, local, tribal, and federal partners for the coordinated enforcement effort. Posters displaying the seized weapons and images of the suspects were shown at the Department of Justice press briefing in Washington, D.C. Bondi stated that those arrested will be prosecuted in the United States, emphasizing that the government intends to seek maximum prison terms. She indicated that foreign nationals convicted in this case will remain incarcerated domestically rather than be deported. Let's take a look.
This multi-agency operation led by DEA with our local, state, tribal, and federal partners targeted one of the largest and most dangerous drug trafficking and foreign terrorist organizations in our country. The DEA seized 11.5 kilos of fentanyl, including an astounding approximately 3 million fentanyl pills, the largest seizure in our nation's history. These are the pills in the bags right there. The main bottom right, the head of this organization, Sinaloa organization, here in the country illegally, 6 of these guys and women here in the country illegally. His name is Alberto Salazar Amaya. He is the leader, and he was living in Salem, Oregon. With him, they got millions of dollars, cash, cars, but the drugs were in Albuquerque, Phoenix, and Utah. That's how insulated these drug dealer cartel leaders make themselves. This was an incredible operation, and that's why I wanted all of you here behind me. It took months and months of work, investigation, leading up to smaller buys, smaller cases, to get this massive amount of drugs and guns off our streets. $5 million approximately in cash, 35 kilos of methamphetamine, 35 kilos of meth. 7.5 kilos of cocaine, 4.5 kilos of heroin, 49 rifles and pistols, all shown in the pictures. And then, of course, the 3 million pills. These pills were stamped as oxycodone. Let that sink in. 3 million pills going on our streets. 3 million pills, the streets of our country, laced with fentanyl, labeled as oxycodone. And they were in all different strengths of fentanyl within them.
Now you're seeing more evidently why President Trump had to do what he did, or why he thought it was right to do what he did with the 1798 Alien Enemies Act, in bringing that back so that he could quickly get the prison gang members out of the country. You see why he had to offer help to Mexico, although Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum did refuse it, in dealing with the cartels and labeling them as terrorists. Because when you don't, you allow the Sinaloa cartel to enter the country illegally, of course, so you can't even track them, and distribute fentanyl, which has been the leading cause of the opioid crisis in America. And of course, the amount of fentanyl, it's not a metric ton, it's not a lot, but the lethality, it takes less than, if I recall, it takes less than a gram of fentanyl to kill 1,000 adult men. So that amount that they have there is capable of killing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people when mixed properly into the drugs that they're intending to distribute across the country. So what President Trump is doing and trying to get a lot of these criminal illegal aliens, again, we covered on the voluntary self-deportations. That's different. He's trying to get the criminals out. They're offering a stipend to that so that their focus can be on the criminals, the people who are trying to poison America, people who are bringing illicit drugs into America, the people who are trafficking guns and weapons into America. He's trying to get them out as soon as possible because when they come in, they don't come in, of course, with a good heart. They don't come in to help improve the country, this country or theirs. They come in to make money at the cost of American lives. Something has to be done. So good on the Attorney General Pam Bondi for reporting this to the American people so that they can see the good the Trump administration is doing in taking such a hardline stance against these criminals. A federal judge appointed by former President Joe Biden has ordered the Trump administration to immediately begin processing and resettling approximately 12,000 refugees into the United States. The order, issued Monday by U.S. District Judge Jamal Whitehead, overrides President Donald Trump's executive order aimed at temporarily halting the refugee admissions program. The judge's ruling follows a February decision in which he blocked the administration's suspension of refugee admissions. Whitehead claimed the order effectively nullified the statutory authority granted to Congress to manage the refugee program. The administration had proposed admitting only 160 individuals and warned that an order to admit thousands would be appealed. President Trump's executive order, signed on his first day in office, directed the Department of Homeland Security to pause refugee resettlement and conduct a review within 90 days. The administration has argued that continued refugee admissions must be weighed against national security and resource concerns. Judge Whitehead gave the administration 7 days to resume processing cases and take necessary steps to facilitate the entry of those with valid clearances. The Department of Justice has not yet responded to the ruling or indicated whether an emergency appeal to the Ninth Circuit will be filed. Let's take a look.
And Tuesday, a judge ordered some 12,000 refugees to be admitted into the United States. The judge ruled that while the president has some power over immigration, he can't override laws made by Congress that set up the refugee system.
Now, this decision came after refugee aid groups and individuals sued, saying a pause on the refugee admissions program hurt refugees and disrupted their services. The judge emphasized that many refugees had their plans canceled suddenly, leaving them in unsafe situations and separating families. Now the government must resume processing refugee applications for those who had already been approved before the pause.
Queen City News Chief Legal Analyst Conley Rose joins us to talk about what this means. And
it's such a shame in two different ways. Of course, the activist judges that we've covered are still performing their performative activism. But then on the other hand, it's a shame that for the refugees, he even has to get to this case because there isn't a proper vetting process. So when you let everybody in, you're also letting in the criminals. Because unfortunately, the good people who truly are coming to America to seek refuge, to seek asylum and to build a better life, if you can't have a proper vetting system, when you let them in, for each 5 good people you let in, you could be letting in 2 criminals whose plan is to come in through the refugee process knowing that there's no vetting, so all of their criminal history stays in the country that they're fleeing from. Meanwhile, they're part of the reason that people have to flee from that country in the first place. So there has to be a proper vetting system, because if you let them all in, of course, we're not saying to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but if you let them all in, with the people you're helping, they're also going to be hurt too. Because those migrant communities tend to stay together, and now you're bringing in the oppressed and potentially also the oppressors. And now, that they're there and you don't know about them, the country that they came from knows about them, they're free to continue their reigns of terror over those same communities that they tried to escape from. I mean, we've heard stories of this, when you would have a Haitian community and all of a sudden, the same gangs that they tried to escape from in Haiti came in through the same asylum or refugee program, are now starting back up and forming a new enterprise inside of those communities. So it's not about disparaging the refugees, it's about making sure that when they come in, they can actually escape from what they wanted to escape from, and that the bad actors, the bad apples, don't spoil the whole bunch. So this judge, again, there is no proper vetting for this system, allowing these refugees to come in, may think that he's doing something good, but it's probably going to have a negative effect overall. Hopefully that's not the case. And to end the news today, let's take a quick recap of the headlines. Judge temporarily halts Trump administration's mass layoff plan at federal agencies. Mexico sues Google over Gulf of America renaming on Maps platform. Defense Secretary Hegseth orders military academies to base admissions solely on merit. Texas enacts nation's toughest foreign land ban, targeting China, Iran, and Russia. And that's the News Plus for today. Remember to join us same time tomorrow for more. I'm TGK Andre. Good night and God bless you.